went to some place way down in Long Beach or way down there somewhere. I don't remember exactly where it was, called Miss Senor Frogs.
We set up and, get all ready to do their sound check, and Jeff, our bass player, singer, Jeff Souza, realizes he didn't bring his bass.
And he's got this look on his face that I'd never seen before. And kind of an look.
And we're just like, you're the bass player. How could you leave your bass in the band room? So he goes, well, what are we going to do? We got to play and stuff like that.
It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And we're playing probably first, like we did a lot of times. So I'm just sweating, man. I'm sweating hard. And I tell John, I forgot my bass. And I says, I think I'll just ask, whoever is playing after us if I can borrow his bass. So I go up to her, this girl named Bobby Jackson, big black girl.
Jeff walks up to her and says, excuse me, I forgot my bass, and would it be possible to borrow your bass? And she's like, oh, you want to borrow my bass? Well, I don't think so.
No, you can't! The old big old black girl, man. You can't use my bass. My bass is my private sweet thing, and I ain't gonna let it out of my sight. Are you crazy?
Do you have $1,000? Something like that, Do you have $1,000? You know how much that bass cost? And I said, oh, you know what? Never mind, So somehow John got on the phone, because he grew up in that area. He got on the phone, he called somebody, and I ended up with something to play. And it was horrible because my factor bass, I can play a low D on it. In a lot of our songs, I needed that low D in. And on this bass, it was just a standard 4-string bass. I didn't have the low D, so I was doing things differently, and it was a nightmare. It was horrible, man. It's never happened again, though.
Hollander made their second television appearance on a Santa Barbara show called Club Notes on Channel 19. This show featured local bands with an in-studio live performance and interview.
We did that show. What I recall is sitting in the booth with some of the producers and having them commenting on the talent, the professionalism, and just the demeanor that the band carried themselves under.
We went to a place in Santa Barbara, a studio in Santa Barbara. John had set up this, it's called Club Notes. But what it is it's you perform and then you do an interview afterwards. And so we thought anything to get any kind of exposure, we're going to go do, because we needed all the exposure we could get and anything would help. So we went to this Club Notes thing, and it was a pretty professional, for Santa Barbara, it was pretty professional. They had a great producer. She was a real sweetheart. And we went in. The guy who interviewed us was pretty funny. He was a lot of fun.
We went up there and we all had our little outfits, and Jeff Castanon, his outfit was pretty bad.
Out walks Jeff Castanon and these tight spandex zebra pants, and I'm looking at him like, what the hell is that, dude?
These zebra spandex pants and this god-awful bright red sweatshirt with a white collar. Oh my God. I don't know how I thought this was cool at the time. I swear to God, I don't.
tear in my eye. I want to say hello. I'm trying not to crack up because we're sitting here with Hollander. God, the pre-interview warm-up was just so much fun. Did you get that? Did you get that? Jeff, you have got the biggest chin. Be careful. Be careful now. I can't look at you. Because I have to duck. I can't look now. No, we're teasing. Jeff and Hollander, thanks for being on the show, you guys. Alex. Just have fun. We're here for 10 minutes, and I'm trying. And the makeup's going down and things. Anyway, Jeff, do me a favor and introduce your cohorts, if you would, please.
This is Chris Gillespie, our drummer.
All right. Chris, thanks.
Back here on my left is Jeff Castanon.
Jeff, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks. And Kevin Shoeb.
Kevin?
On keyboards.
All right. And that jacket. Yeah. So let's get right to the name, shall we? Hollander.
Which one?
Hollander. Hollander.
Oh. Well, that's a long story. My real last name is Hall. And when I met Chris's last name was Durr. And so we called ourselves Hollander.
So, and Hall & Oates was already taken.
Hall & Oates was taken. The theater show, the Ventura Theater shows, they all kind of run together for me. But those are the best shows we ever did because it was a real theater. It held like, I don't know, 1,000 people or 1,200 people, something like that. It had a real stage. It was like a real gig.
This was a gig that made us really feel like rock stars. I mean, we had, lights, and we got to, change backstage and rub elbows with, some of the headliners, and, man, we had some great gigs.
We had a show with Rick Wakeman, and Rick Wakeman to me is like my ultimate keyboardist. He is, out of any musician out there at that time, he would have been the one I would want to meet, and I had a chance to meet him.
I think this was probably the most important gig to all of us. He wasn't the biggest artist that we got to open for, but I think he was probably the closest to all of our hearts because we were all into Yes and some of their progressive music, and so we were all especially excited to play with him.
When we played our set, we opened up with a couple acoustic songs, and one of them was Long Distance Runaround.
Cold summer, listening, hot color, melting the anger to stone. I still remember the dream there. I still remember the time we said goodbye. Did we really tell lies, letting in the sunshine? Did we really count to 100?
And I remember looking up to the balcony where the band comes down from, backstage, and seeing Rick Wakeman standing there with this big smile on his face and
Looking down on us, and he gave us the thumbs up, and that was great. And then he continued to watch most of our set. And
The one thing I remember about the Wakeman show was when we came out with the wigs. We had these like long Wakeman-esque wigs from the, like he had his hair in the 70s and stuff.
incidentally, that was also the same gig that right before the curtain opened, Jeff Sousa leans over and
I kissed him right here on the cheek. And he looked at me like I was some kind of weirdo or something. But that just set the mood, It was like, okay, here we go.
usually after our theater shows, we always like to have a place to go and just kind of unwind and stuff like that. And so we always rented a room at either the Country Inn or the Pierpont Inn. We only did the Pierpont Inn once, but most of the shows we rented a room at the Country Inn. And those were nice because we get into the Country Inn, we always get a suite. And it's on the top floor, third floor. And it had a balcony, and it was really nice. It was a really nice place to stretch out before the show and before we went to the show.
And so that became our tradition. And it was not wild, crazy parties. It was just good fun with a lot of friends,
And we'd have beer and all sorts of women would be there. And
We don't drink, smoke, do drugs or anything, so basically it only consisted of drinking root beer and eating chips.
it would be just free-for-all sex, drugs, rock and roll.
We'd have beer and snacks or whatever, and
All the girls that would throw themselves at us. It was just awesome. And oh wait, those were our wives. Oh.
After a number of successful shows, Hollander began to notice a drop in attendance from this point on. This may have been due to overplaying, under-advertising, or just loss of enthusiasm. The band had made the hard push to get label recognition, only to be ignored time and time again. One of the low point, or one of the low points for me and probably the rest of the guys, had to have been the gig we did in Santa Barbara, or Goleta, somewhere out there. And man, this was depressing.
It's like way out in the middle of nowhere. It wasn't even in the town. And, we get there, we're pumped, man, get our stuff all set up and we sound check, everything sounding cool.
I remember leaving to go hang, and we went to State Street or something, we hung out, and we expect to get back and to see the club filled and, the whole shot, and we get back and there's no cars in the parking lot.
There was 3 people there. And they weren't even like people from the street. It was 3 people, our manager, one of our girlfriends, and this guy that came with our guitar player.
And oh man, it was the most embarrassing gig that we've ever had. We're like, between the songs, it was so quiet. Like, you hear this guy's playing pool. I mean, his pool playing was louder than the ambiance in the room. And we finished the gig, and I remember walking out of there, and everyone's hanging their head, and John just went off on us.
And the worst part of that night is, we get told off afterwards, like we had planned it that way. Our manager, bless him, I mean, he John was so just into this band that whenever we had a bad night, he would go nuts.
I remember the one thing that he said was, he had invited a bunch of people to go to the show, his friends actually, and they didn't come to the show. So he said, "That's it, they're off the list. They are off the list. They're never getting invited to another Hollander show again." And I just thought that was kind of funny though, because that's probably what they wanted. Morale was at an all-time low, leading to the lack of desire to rehearse, perform, and write new material. The members of the band began to feel a distance between themselves for the first time. It was just a matter of time before the band members would go their separate ways.
what broke up Hollander? Well, I think several things. We weren't doing a lot of shows, I remember, at the end there. I think we had gotten to the point where, we had done a lot of things locally, and we were respected locally, but we weren't seeming to get anywhere. And Chris hurt his shoulder or something in an accident at work.
I think we wore out our welcome with our friends and family. I mean, there's only so many gigs that your friends and family are going to go to before they decide that it's a lot more comfortable to stay on the couch and watch TV. So
Jeff Castanon was leading more toward pop at the time, getting out of the progressive rock vein. Sousa was moving.
And if Sousa hadn't left town, maybe we would have gotten back together. But, you know, he left town, had too many kids. I mean, had some kids, and, you know, wanted to raise his kids. I wanted to raise my kids, you know, in a different area. You know, that's kind of what happened.
The guys talk about their favorite Hollander songs, then say a few parting words when Behind the Music continues.